What's going on YouTube? It's Teach back again with another video, and today we're talking about the NFC West. I'm going to run you through my regular season record predictions for all four of these squads. I'd love to hear your record predictions down below in the comment section. Do you think San Francisco claims the division again? Can Seattle steal it away from them? And what are you thinking about the Rams and the Cardinals this year? They're two teams that are kind of hard to peg right now, specifically the Rams. A lot of talent there, but also a lot of holes. But I want to hear your NFC West thoughts, record predictions, who makes the playoffs, all that sort of fun stuff down below in the comments section. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Hit that like button if you do. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and see more football content like this. Consider becoming a channel member if you want to help me out any more and get some potential extra content, including my NFL draft rankings for where I am in scouting at this point of the year. Also, you can check out our sponsor, BetUS. A lot of great sign-up offers if you're looking to bet on baseball or put in some, division-winning bets ahead of time. Who might come away with the NFC West maybe is a bet that you want to place. So definitely check out BetUS and their sign-up offers down below in the description. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. You can see I have the San Francisco 49ers going 14-3. Let's take a look at their depth chart to kick us off here. And obviously not a whole lot needs to be said. One of the best teams in football. Kyle Shanahan and his offense, crazy. Steve Wilkes, I think, is a great defensive coordinator hire. And if he was going to become the head coach in Carolina, I think this is a job he can take to put himself pretty deep into the mix for head coaching offers, next head coaching carousel. So great move from him as well. Brandon Ayuk, we'll see what they do with his contract, but just going into next year, great number two, as well as Deebo Samuel. This is, do-it-all type of guy that Kyle Shanahan does a fantastic job maximizing his skill set, getting him into space, and just letting him be a tank with the ball in his hands. Jawan Jennings, I think, is good enough as a 3 for this offense. The offensive line has some question marks. Trent Williams, obviously not being one of them, probably still the best left tackle in football, if not the best. He's certainly in that top 3 to 5 conversation. Aaron Banks, never thought was a great fit. Maybe this is a year where it kind of changes, but I think he's been disappointing. Jake Brendel, good to see him back going into year 2. I think he'll build upon what he had last year. Spencer Burford, kind of the same conversation. And then right tackle, huge question mark. Mike McGlinchey's in Denver now, and they just did not address the position in free agency. And there's still guys available, so maybe that changes. Or in the draft. They drafted a kicker in the top 100 instead of addressing offensive line, which is pretty wild. But that being said, maybe that just means they have that much faith and confidence in Colton McKivitz. Maybe. But I'm probably on the side of doubting that versus believing that's actually the truth. And they just I think they ultimately ran out of assets and resources to be able to replace that position. And maybe they'll wait till training camp when a veteran gets cut and they'll say, hey, come to San Francisco, compete for a championship. You're an upgrade that we're looking for. That's totally plausible. And that's kind of the third stage of free agency that we just haven't reached just yet. Then we get to the quarterback position. Brock Purdy, if he's healthy, I think is the guy. I'd love to see Trey Lance have the breakout season. Ultimately, I don't think it's going to happen in San Francisco. Maybe if he gets the chance to be a starter, it's elsewhere. But I don't know. This quarterback situation right now is a huge TBD. And then there's Sam Darnold, who I don't think is very good. But if there's a place where he puts up crazy numbers, it's for Kyle Shanahan's offense in San Francisco. And I know Shanahan likes him a ton. Chris Sims talks about it a ton on his On Button podcast. And I can totally understand that. Darnold's strengths coming out of USC match perfectly with what Kyle Shanahan is asking out of his signal caller. So maybe this is the year where we see Darnold put up good numbers. That tastes like vinegar coming out of my mouth, but it's totally plausible. Obviously, great running back situation. Elijah Mitchell is your number 2. Plenty of teams would love to have him headlining a committee. And obviously, Christian McCaffrey, a top 3 running back in football by my estimation. Then you get to the defense, which is also crazy loaded. Nick Bosa, potentially the best edge rusher in football. If not one, he's certainly in that top 4 conversation. Javon Hargrave fills that number 2 defensive tackle spot that, ever since DeForest Buckner left or got traded to Indianapolis, that hasn't really been addressed because Javon Kinlaw's been disappointing. And then you also have Eric Armstead, who's this defensive tackle, can also play defensive end. So if we do see the Javon Kinlaw breakout, you can still have all these guys on the field. And that's a best case scenario. If you're a San Francisco fan, the best case scenario is Javon Kinlaw figures it out. He and Javon Hargrave play on the inside. Eric Armstead, Nick Bosa play on the ends. And that is pretty comfortably probably the best defensive line in football. And just good luck opposing quarterbacks and opposing offensive lines. I don't know what you do against that. But even beyond that, I could totally see them doing what they did with Charles Omenihu with Clelin Ferrell, where it's Omenihu wasn't a first-round pick and a disappointing, number 4 overall selection, but go to this place, get coached up, get favorable opportunities, get maybe a double-digit $1 million contract when he leaves. It wouldn't totally surprise me. Kerry Hyder's also been super productive there, so not only have a good, starting 4 right now, plus the upside of Javon Kinlaw, they have a lot of depth there to go across the defensive line. And then you get to the linebackers. They have the best linebacker tandem in football. Also, Drake Jackson, didn't mention him. He could totally be, second-year breakout guy. But now moving on, let's talk about linebackers. Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, simply put, best linebacker tandem in football. And they used to have the best linebacker trio with Azeez Al-Shaair, but he's now in Tennessee. But I think they'll be okay there at inside linebacker. And then you get to the secondary, and there's some spots where I definitely think they could do better. Darrell Luther Jr., I didn't love this draft class. It's actually the worst draft class in my estimation for the 2023 draft. We'll find out, obviously. But Darrell Luther Jr. was one that I was like, maybe. Small school guy. I could see them kind of working their magic on him. But also you have Luminor there, I think that could be fine, especially when you consider Charvarius Ward. I think is a really nice player. He's not elite by any stretch, but he's good enough for this defense, especially with that front four in front of him. Like he'll be more than enough. So they're just trying to figure out that number 2 corner spot. You bring back Deshaun Gibson, who played well for them. Talanoa Hufanga, maybe a better first half of last year than second half. I still think is a good football player and makes some big plays for them. And then obviously trying to figure out who's going to replace Jimmy Ward in that nickel cornerback, strong safety hybrid spot. Right now, our lads has it being Isaiah Oliver. I think it'll be Jair Brown. I see a lot of Jimmy Ward's skill set in Jair Brown. I think he'll be able to kind of play that role. Maybe not week 1, but by the end of the year, you're going to see him playing that strong safety, nickel corner hybrid. And of course, I don't normally show special teams, but Zane Gonzalez, Jake Moody, who they drafted in the top 100. We'll see how that ultimately does play out. And now switching over to look at their record. Don't focus necessarily on the week by week, because you can already see I have them losing week 2 to Los Angeles Rams, who, spoiler alert, not going to have a great record in this video. But 4-2 division, I can't have this team go 17-0, so I got to find losses. And division games always play weird, so that's why. But again, don't focus necessarily on the game by game. I have this team being the number 1, seeded team when it comes to record in the NFC. I think they have a pretty favorable schedule, and I think 14-3 is totally in the cards. And spoiler alert, in case you didn't see the NFC East video, I have Philadelphia at 13-4. I do think it's going to come down to those 2 teams for the top spot in the NFC. And ultimately, if there's an NFC team to hoist the Lombardi, my money would be on one of those 2 squads, stealing away from the AFC. But the losses I do have them, taking 1 to Seattle, have them splitting that series. Cincinnati is one where if this becomes, win it through the air type of contest, I just don't know if Brock Purdy is going to be able to keep up with that. If that becomes a game where San Francisco scores on the opening drive, kind of dictates the pace of play and can control the clock, and maybe Cincinnati goes 3 and out on their first possession, and then they're kind of playing catch up with San Francisco and what they can do with the run game. Okay, maybe that game flips, but again, I'm not going to have this team go 17-0. Got to find losses, and I think the Rams, that series is always interesting. Seattle's good enough to steal a game away from them. I think Cincinnati's the other team that could steal one away from them. Also, you have the Week 13 game against Philadelphia, which certainly could be one where the Eagles get a leg up on San Francisco, and maybe that's ultimately the game that makes Philadelphia 14-3 and instead moves San Francisco to 13-4. So, got to still figure that out. I'm not, it's not in stone that I have San Francisco's the 1 seed, Philly's the 2. I may change my mind once we get to my way too early, postseason predictions. But for right now, I'm feeling like San Francisco's gonna be the team that gets that 1 game leg up. But now we're gonna go ahead and talk about the Seattle Seahawks, a team that I also have making the playoffs. And a big reason why I see this team as postseason caliber is that offense. I mean, just look at this wide receiver trio. You bring in Jackson Smith-Njigba as a first-round pick, and he is the exact slot wide receiver they just didn't have. They have the big body, physical, field stretcher in DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett, who has enough speed to threaten over the top, but because that gets a lot of off coverage and becomes this nice little 8 yards, can fall down for a first down. Doesn't like taking contact, but often will fall down at the sticks and get you a new set of downs. And then Jackson Smith-Njigba is the perfect complement as this guy who will just eat up underneath in the intermediate parts of the field, and specifically between the hashes. He was the exact wide receiver they just didn't have. And they got him in a great spot at pick number 20. So love that trio. And also, Tyler Lockett's been banged up, so now I feel like JSN gives them a really stable floor of DK Metcalf, JSN. If Lockett's out, that's a wide receiver duo that can still keep your offense running at a high level. And also long term, I don't know if Lockett's going to be around in 3 years' time, just picking on an arbitrary time period. So long term, you got to have that 1-2 punch with Metcalf and JSN. So I love that selection there at 20. In the offensive line's one I like a lot. I think Charles Cross was really solid last year. Maybe a little bit better in the first half than second half, but I think he'll get that much better in year 2. But he was also my number 1 offensive tackle, so leaning into a draft prior there for sure. Abraham Lucas, I've heard it argued, and it's kind of hard to dissuade people's arguments. He might have been the better rookie tackle last year. He really might have been. So I'm really excited to see what he looks like in year 2. Damian Lewis, I think, is fine enough at guard. Kind of same thing with Phil Haynes. Not awesome, but fine enough. And I do think Oluwatimi is going to be the team starting center. Absolute steal getting him in the 5th round. I think he's a great blocking, scheme fit in that zone blocking scheme. Geno Smith, big question mark. Can he do what he did last year and double down on it? I actually think he will. I legitimately do think he will be able to back up what he did last year. I don't see that as a fluke. I think legitimately Geno Smith has grown, adapted to the NFL and how it plays now, specifically at the quarterback position. But also in Seattle, I mean, you can make an argument last year was the best offensive line he's ever played with in his career, at least as a starter. And it's certainly the most offensive firepower he's had, both with running backs and wide receivers. And also, kind of feels like he was drafted in the second round by the Jets. Yes, I understand they had faith in him to draft him in the second round, but Pete Carroll bought into him. Like, I think that confidence goes a long way, specifically at a position that it's very physical, but it's also very mental. And knowing that you have a coach in your corner goes a long way. So I actually think Geno Smith's going to be able to back it up this year. Then you get to the running back spot. Kenneth Murray, Zach Charbonnet, great 1-2 punch. Love it. And I was a little iffy on the Charbonnet pick with the first of 2 second rounders Seattle had, just because I was like, feels like a very similar skill set to Kenneth Walker. But Charbonnet brings a little bit more receiving ability, and they still have some other guys who can kind of be that third down pass catching specialist back. If you're down by 2 touchdowns, they'll be on the field maybe more than some of the Kenneth Walkers and Charbonnets of this offense. But that being said, you look at where these guys have had so much success, specifically in college, but even last year. Kenneth Walker is a force to be reckoned with, but a majority of his snaps played come with Geno Smith under center. Zach Charbonnet did a ton at UCLA with a quarterback playing out of shotgun. So I think that's kind of where this committee is going to go. If you're in shotgun, it'll be Charbonnet. If it's under center, it'll be Kenneth Walker. And Seattle last year did a really good job of blending both those looks and really keeping defenses on their toes. So ultimately, I've come around to that selection. I think it's actually going to be a really nice 1-2 punch, assuming both guys will be healthy. Now let's get over the defense. You bring in Draymond Jones, and you get some immediate pass rush help that this team has been looking for some time now. I don't know why the screen is not cooperating with me, but I'm going to quit fidgeting with it. But I actually think Draymond Jones is probably maybe the most important addition this team made. I mean, that's tough to say because I love the JSN addition as well as Devon Witherspoon, we'll talk about in a little bit. But they didn't address edge. They needed to find extra pass rush somewhere. I think Draymond Jones gives you that. He's not going to be great against the run. I think he'll be awesome as a pass rusher. So third and long passing situations, he'll kind of live up to the money they are paying him. But also, I think I don't want a modest contract considering what I was kind of thinking he would end up getting. And then the interior defensive line, beyond that may not be anything special. Jaron Reed, they brought him back. It's a cool story, but I don't know if that really moves the needle for that interior defensive line. Question marks at edge, right? I'm not a big Darrell Taylor guy. I think Uchenna Nwosu is a really nice player, but he's a little bit of a hybrid, edge rusher, zone specialist. I think his sack total last year, probably a little bit more of an anomaly versus prior years in his career and where I think his career is going to go. But still a nice player. I'm not saying he's bad, but if you give this team like a B+, double-digit sack a year. If this team had a Bradley Chubb-esque edge rusher, I look at this defense as one of the best in football, legitimately. And they just don't really have that right now. But maybe Boye Mafe becomes that guy. Second-year player out of Minnesota. I think they got him as a great value as a second-rounder from the Golden Gophers. And then kind of the same thing with Derek Hall. Super long-armed, really explosive. Maybe plays a little too upright, but man, the production at Auburn was great. And he does what he does so well that I don't really mind it. So maybe one of those 2 second-rounders, Mafe from 2022 and then Hall from 2023, maybe one of those guys breaks on the scene and gives you some big numbers this year. Maybe they're the guy to kind of assume the role of being this team's quote-unquote Bradley Chubb. Hopefully that point lands home. And then we get to the off-ball linebackers. I think this team actually has some really nice depth there. And inside linebacker, obviously it's cool bringing back Bobby Wagner, and where I don't think Jaron Reed is the guy he was initially in Seattle. Bobby Wagner isn't either, but he's still a good enough player. And for 1 year, $7 million, yeah, I think that's a good value for Bobby Wagner. They also signed Devin Bush. So in the case of an injury for Wagner or Jordan Brooks, he has some nice depth there as well. And I also think Jordan Brooks getting Bobby Wagner back makes him a better player. And I wasn't in love with the Brooks pick, but I think he's been better than people want to see him as. So that's been a little bit bewildering. But I actually think I'm a little bit I was low on the pick when it initially happened, but I think I'm actually kind of higher on the player now for where he is in his career. Then we get to the secondary, and my, oh my, adding Devon Witherspoon as this twitchy 0 to 100 type of specialist corner that, oh, by the way, runs 4.42. Maybe a little undersized, but don't worry about that. You can play mismatch. Like, Devon Witherspoon can be the guy who gets the assignment against the guy who is more of a shifty, agile, separating type of wide receiver. And then Tariq Woolen on the other side, who, 6 interceptions last year, bloomed way faster than I thought he would come out of UTSA, but legit 4.2 speed at 6'4", pterodactyl wings for arms. It's an awesome 1-2 punch. And this team really could get creative and it's funny, Kobe Bryant was the smaller corner that got drafted the same year as Tariq Woolen, but he's still 6'1" and almost 200 pounds. He's not small. So I could see in nickel spots, again, depending on the team and, who you're playing, right? I could see Devon Witherspoon moving into the slot, again, depending on how much of a threat that slot wide receiver is, and Kobe Bryant playing on the outside. I don't think Kobe Bryant was terrible last year. I really don't. I think in year 2 he can get that much better. So love that cornerback trio. I think it's actually a really nice unit. And they got a ton of depth at safety as well, Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams, who I know is making a lot of money and is battling some injuries, but still a really good football player when he's on the field. And then also Julian Love, one of the more underrated signings from free agency. And ultimately, I think had they not been able to get the chance to draft Devon Witherspoon, Julian Love would have been their nickel corner. But also this opens up the door next year where I'm not trying to, peer into a crystal ball, but the cap hit starts to become pretty, for lack of a better word, destructive for Jamal Adams. Like it does a number on the Seattle Seahawks cap hit. So I could see them trying to move on from that. And Julian Love there gives you a nice, solid, good enough player to kind of replace what you have in Jamal Adams. But all in all, really like the roster. Still like Pete Carroll a ton. That's why I have this team going 10-7 and making it to the playoffs. So let's go ahead and look at that schedule. Now that we're looking at it, 4-2 in the division. Yes, I have the Rams starting out 2-0, and there are not a whole lot of other wins. But again, don't focus on the individual games. Just focus on the number mark or the win total, and where I have them or not having them make the playoffs in that conference seeding. Cincinnati versus Seattle, that's actually like a sneaky awesome game to watch from an offensive firepower standpoint. And if the Seattle secondary is as good as I think it is, it might be one of the better secondaries to go toe-to-toe with that Cincinnati pass-catching trio, assuming everyone's healthy, of course. The Cleveland game, that's obviously 50-51. You could certainly flip that one the other way. And I have them winning 1-2 against Seattle or San Francisco, we already talked about that. But I think that's going to be a really, really fun matchup to see this upcoming season. And then, a loss to Philadelphia. I think the Eagles are just a slightly better roster. But then you end the regular season on a 3-game win streak against Tennessee, Pittsburgh, and Arizona, and carry that momentum into the playoffs to the 7th seed. So, yeah, all in all, I think this is a really solid Seattle team. And honestly, 10-7, I could see 11-6. If all things really come together, I don't think 12-5 is out of the cards either. And maybe that's a good enough record to kind of steal this division away or make it, a tiebreaker situation to decide who wins the NFC West. Wouldn't shock me, not predicting it, but it wouldn't have me floored whatsoever. All right, now it's time to talk about the Los Angeles Rams, and I'm going to hide the record just because I'm not necessarily proud of it, but we'll talk about it now with the roster. The offense, I think, will be good enough. I still think they're kind of missing the number 2 wide receiver, Demarcus Robinson. He's not that guy. Van Jefferson's a good player, but I like him much more as a wide receiver 3 than I do as a 2. And Ben Skoronski, I'm a Notre Dame fan, but he's kind of an interesting fullback, athletic tight end, big body slot. There's not really one position I like him at. He's just kind of this weird jack of all trades, mismatch type of weapon. But technically he does play wide receiver. But again, I kind of like him as a wide receiver 4. You're going to do something interesting with him, kind of gadget player versus hey, he's one of our top 3 wide receivers. So that's a little problematic, and I do have some concerns there. But to kind of counterbalance that, Cooper Kupp is one of the best football players and one of the best wide receivers in the league when he's healthy. Then you get to the offensive line. This is my other issue with this team. Joe Noteboom was not good last year. And I liked what I saw 2 seasons ago, and I thought they got him at a good price point on that extension. But last year was rough, man. It was bad. So if he bounces back, cool. I feel better about this offense. But if it's the Joe Noteboom we saw last year, rough times are ahead for Matt Stafford and Sean McVay. Steve Avila, I think, is a great pick. I think he's a really good scheme fit. Great pass protector for a a pass-heavy offense. He's not necessarily the best on the move, so the zone blocking aspects of Sean McVay's offense, maybe he leaves some to be desired there. Maybe that ultimately moves him to center, maybe. But ultimately, I think the pros to his pass protecting outweigh the cons of maybe where he's not the most fleet of foot and maybe not the best scheme fit from that standpoint. And then you get to the rest of the offensive line. Brian Allen, I think you could do better there. He's not horrible, but they're also going to need Logan Bruss to take a step forward in his young career. Rob Havenstein's kind of been the one staple of this offensive line that is where I know he's going to be pretty good, and I think that case will continue. Tyler Higbee, Hunter Long, they get back in the Jalen Ramsey trade, which I shouldn't laugh at because Rams fans across the country, in despair because of that move. But good enough tight ends, I guess. Maybe this is a Hunter Long breakout season. Maybe the Rams are onto something there. But Matt Stafford, and then Stetson Bennett, I think that's kind of an interesting fit. A couple of Georgia, QBs. And if there was a day 3 quarterback that wouldn't surprise me that actually has an okay NFL career, Stetson Bennett's actually probably it. Not that he has awesome measurables or anything like that, but last year at Georgia versus 2 years ago took a huge step forward, and I don't know, maybe Sean McVay can work his magic on it. Again, I'm not banking on it. It's probably a 1% thing. I'm not, again, putting any money on it, but if there is one of those day 3 quarterbacks that surprises me and goes above and beyond what my expectations are, maybe Stetson Bennett's the guy. But then we get to Matt Stafford, and I'll just kind of be frank. I think the offensive line's really bad, and he's got 1 wide receiver, so I could, and plus he's coming off of an elbow injury. That's never what you want to see for a quarterback in his 30s. I think this is going to be the last year Matt Stafford plays in the league, and I don't think it's going to be a good note for him to end on. I think, look, he led the league in interceptions his Super Bowl run. I think the same thing's going to happen this year, but they're not going to win a Super Bowl at it. And again, I'm not showing you the record because I don't think this team's going to be very good. there's just there's too many holes. And Cooper Kupp's great, and Sean McVay's awesome, and I think Matt Stafford can run that offense to a high level, but with that offensive line, at his age, with his injury history, I don't even know if he plays all 17 games, to be honest with you. And honestly, I would probably doubt that he does. So, yeah, I don't think this is going to be a good way for Stafford in his career, but I do think it's going to be his last year in the NFL, which sucks because he's a guy I've kind of grown up always having in the league. So, really fun player, but I think this is going to be a tough end to it. And then the running backs are whatever. Kyron Williams is a good run blocker, not an uber athlete. Cam Akers, whatever. He's fine enough. Then we get to the defense, and simply put, this defense is terrible without Aaron Donald. With Aaron Donald, there's 10 holes, maybe 9 holes, not including Jordan Fuller. And then there's one of the best defensive players still in the league in Aaron Donald. But if Aaron Donald misses any games this year, that will be the worst defense in the league, pretty comfortably, to me. Like, even worse than Arizona. And obviously, we haven't talked about Arizona yet, but I don't think that's a great defense either. I just think it's Aaron Donald and a whole lot of nothing else. Byron Young, third-round pick, older guy, good athlete. Maybe he can produce right away, but that's leading on a pretty big asterisk right there. Ernest Jones, second-year player. Maybe he's better than I'm anticipating. Then you look at the secondary, and it's like Keller Witherspoon. I'm a Steelers fan, and yeah, I can tell you that's probably not going to be a great player there. And then Darian Kendrick. Look, if you're running upper 4.6, 4.7 at your 40 time, I don't know if I can lean on that being an NFL caliber corner. And I go back to that Tampa Bay Rams game last year, and Tampa Bay ran down the field in that 2-minute drive to steal the game away from Los Angeles by picking on Darian Kendrick, which Tom Brady's picked on a ton of rookie cornerbacks in his career, so I'm reading too much into it. But he was the weak link they wanted to attack on a defense that had plenty of weak links last year. So that's an issue. And then you get to the safety spots, and it's like, I like Jordan Fuller, and I'm intrigued by Jason Taylor II from Oklahoma State. I think they got a good value on him in the 7th round, but I'm pinning my laurels to things that probably aren't that big of a difference, right? Again, I think Fuller's a good player. Aaron Donald's still one of the best defensive players in the league. I'd still say he's IDL 1 in the NFL, but the rest of that defense is just putrid. And Raheem Morris has his work cut out for him, without a doubt. So let's go ahead and unveil 4-13. I think this team ultimately is going to be picking somewhere in the top 5, and if Les Snead is still the GM, I was just talking to my buddy about this actually, and obviously this is so hard to tell. I think the Rams will be picking in the top 5, and if Arizona has the number 1 pick and they're comfortable rolling with Kyler, I can see an interdivision trade here to give the Rams Caleb Williams and get the USC kid staying in LA. And obviously, again, don't pin this or write this in pen. I'm just kind of talking off the cuff, and I'm just kind of talking football with you. But if you were to ask me who I think the Rams quarterback is next season, I'm going to tell you Caleb Williams. I legitimately do think that. And we've already seen Les Snead willing to part way with picks. And I think GMs are going to take advantage of that. So if they're picking the top 5 and feel like they have the ammunition to move up and get Caleb Williams, I think they will. Assuming Caleb Williams lives up to his draft hype, which we've seen the Spencer Rattler story, so no guarantee he does that. 3-3 division, so I'm kind of leaning on division games to give this team some wins, including back-to-back wins start the year. Maybe it's a home and home split with Seattle, and you can the Rams win that game. Yeah. But the Bengals offense is going to tear Los Angeles to shreds. Philadelphia is going to tear them to shreds. I have them splitting with Arizona because I have to give Arizona wins. Pittsburgh, Matt Canada might not be a very good OC, but I think there's enough firepower there to get the job done. Dallas, as long as that offense doesn't have a weird bust game, which they are prone to do sometimes, I think there's just too much offensive, skill sets and too much offensive, skill in general to keep up with if you're Los Angeles with that bad offensive line and just a defense that can stop a nosebleed. The Browns, another offense I think is better than Los Angeles, but also I just look at that front 4 they have now with Zadarius Smith, Myles Garrett, Dalvin Tomlinson, Siaki Ika, and I'm seeing a handful of mismatches there against the Rams offensive line, so that's holding me back. I think the Ravens offense is better. Washington's pass rush, I think, will eat up this offensive line. The Saints have a ton of offensive weapons. And I think that defensive line, even if it's just Cam Jordan, I think that's a problem. So I'm kind of seeing the same things over and over again. Same thing with the Giants. I also think that run game could kind of kill Los Angeles. And then I have San Francisco winning the last game of the year for the Rams because they're just a better team in general from top down. So, yeah, sorry, Rams fans. I think it's going to be another disappointing year. I think it's going to be the last year Sean McVay is on the sideline, at least for the Rams. I think he's going to go to the booth after this. I think Stafford's going to hang it up. If they keep Les Snead, I think he's going to end up moving up and try to get a Caleb Williams, Drake May type of guy. That's kind of where I think this season's ultimately heading for Los Angeles. But let's leave that downer and go to another one. To the Arizona Cardinals. So, spoiler, I do have them having the worst record in the NFL. So in this, what if world I'm kind of playing with my record predictions, Arizona would get the number 1 pick. I do have Houston being a little bit better than some were expecting, but still like a 6-11 team. So probably a team that's in around that, 10th overall pick selection. So I think this team's going to be well suited for the next draft. So kind of embrace a bad year here. If you're a Cardinals fan, I would tell you embrace a bad year. And I think you're in store for one with no Kyler Murray and then the rest of this roster, which we'll talk about now. And obviously this is the first year with no DeAndre Hopkins, so that's a big loss in and of itself. He just signed with Tennessee the day I'm recording this, actually. Marquise Brown's still a good player. Rondale Moore, I think there's things about him I like, but he's clearly not a number 1. That move would have already happened. Like if he was going to be like a number 1 wide receiver at 5'8", like we would have already seen that he has that skill set. He's just more so like an interesting number 2, fascinating gadget player who can do some things to open up other guys. And then Greg Dortch as your 3. I actually hope it ends up being Michael Wilson. Kind of hope they give Michael Wilson what would have been DeAndre Hopkins' role in this offense, which also we had to talk about. Jonathan Gannon in town as the new offensive coordinator. So that plus the moves we saw from Monty Austinforth, the new GM. I think Gannon's going to take it slow. Austinforth was also crushing it in the draft, but didn't do anything during free agency, which signals to me this team is looking at a 2-year time period, 2-year turnaround. So again, kind of going back to the 2-15 record, I think the organization kind of wants that. Teams don't tank, but front offices do. And I think that's kind of what Austinforth is looking for. Get some good draft picks, rebuild this roster in 2 years' time. And there's a lot of holes for them to fill, including that wide receiver spot. The offensive line, DJ Humphries, good enough tackle. They obviously draft Paris Johnson Jr. after trading back and then getting back to the number 6 overall pick. And then Josh Jones has only played good at left tackle. So I don't know if their plan is to move Paris Johnson Jr. over to right tackle, which I really don't think is a problem. Like position value, people might say, you draft left tackles in the top 10. Yeah, well, Penei Sewell's worked out just fine as a 7th overall pick playing right tackle. And I think we just have to understand that if you have a weak spot at tackle, like I talked about in my AFC West video, if Trey Pipkins is bad for the Chargers, if they go up against elite edge rusher, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, you name it, they're going to line up against Trey Pipkins because that's the mismatch to exploit. So left tackle versus right tackle, I don't think it's as big of a talking point as it once was. So I don't really care if Paris Johnson Jr. plays left tackle or right tackle. He did play right guard at Ohio State. I just want him starting right away. I just want to see this guy who's uber athletic, freaky, good mirroring skills, great footwork, an abundance of strength. This guy needs to be starting right away because I think he could end up being one of the better left tackles or right tackles in the NFL. And he was my OT1 for a reason. I have a ton of faith in the kid. But it's going to be interesting to see DJ Humphries, Josh Jones. I think long-term it'll be Josh Jones at left tackle, Paris Johnson Jr. right tackle, but we'll see. The interior offensive line, you get Will Hernandez back, who missed some time last year, but when he was playing better than his last couple of years in New York, which is good. But then a whole lot more to figure out. Elijah Wilkinson coming over from Atlanta, they replaced him for a reason too, so a lot to figure out there. Zach Ertz, towards the end of his career, hopefully we see a lot of Trey McBride. That's kind of like one of the other offensive pieces I'm kind of excited to see for Arizona. It's like, he was your first pick. Obviously, they traded a first-round pick for Hollywood Brown in 2022. But then they used their first selection on Trey McBride, so that better work out to me. So I want to see what they get out of him this year. Kyler Murray's going to miss some time, so Colt McCoy, Clayton Tune, whoever ends up being the starter. I'm actually intrigued by Clayton Tune. Kind of like Stetson Bennett. If there's a day 3 guy that could go above and beyond expectations, I'd probably say it's Stetson Bennett, but if not him, then Clayton Tune, maybe that guy. Him or, of course, my guy Tanner McKee, but Tanner McKee just doesn't have a pathway to the field in Philadelphia, so you can kind of, move on from that. And the running back room is fine, like Corey Clement, James Conner, it's fine, but they don't have a long-term guy there. So, in 2 years' time, that backfield's going to look different. I'm just going to be fascinated to see, if this team's 0-6 to start the year and Kyler gets the clean bill of health and the green light, I just don't see any need to play him. Honestly, I don't play him if I'm Arizona. I'd just give him the full year, make sure he's at 100%, and then we'll see what 2024 has in store. Also, by not throwing him back out there, you're negating the risk of injury. Therefore, maybe keeping the door open for a trade, because the team's not going to trade for a quarterback that was hurt to start the year and then got hurt once he got back. No team's going to do that. But if you don't play him and he doesn't get hurt, there's an avenue to trade him if they do opt to go down that route. And if they think, hey, 2-15, we got the number 1 pick, we're taking Caleb Williams. A lot of different possibilities this team could go down through long term. And the defense, just simply put, is not very good. LJ Collier is a first-round bust. Carlos Watkins is not very good. Monte Sanders, Cam Thomas, I'm intrigued by that. A couple of day 2 selections. Sanders, freaky athletic. Cam Thomas, I think if he doesn't get hurt at the Senior Bowl, ends up becoming either a late first rounder or one of the first picks of the second round, but he ends up going a little bit later than that. But I actually think if there's going to be a breakout guy on this team, it's probably Cam Thompson, at least from the edge group. Owen Papo, uber athletic linebacker, Zaven Collins. I think those two could be a really nice complementary piece to one another. I think this could be a nice year for Collins. He's a really good run defender. Just interested to see what it looks like in coverage. And then you get to the secondary. I'm assuming a Budda Baker trade does end up happening. And then after that, it's Jalen Thompson, who they paid some good money to. One of the mini moves that, it's like, Steve Kahn, man, what are we doing here, dude? And that's obviously why he doesn't have the job anymore. And then if they do move on from Baker, I don't know who's going to take that spot. It's not going to be pretty. And then the cornerback spot, Antonio Hamilton, Marco Wilson, who has some talent, but still young in his career. We'll see where that goes, but I'm not, betting on him having a breakout season and becoming a top 10 corner. I'm just not. So yeah, I think that secondary is going to be pretty rough. And then there's Isaiah Simmons, who's playing some nickel corner now. And I actually do think that's a pretty good role for him. And I think this could be the year where he breaks out, but they didn't pick up his fifth-year option. So this is also kind of a prove-it year for him. And if he hits the market and he has a big season, no guarantee he's even coming back to Arizona. No guarantee they even have interest in him. This is not the front office that drafted him. So long story short, Collins, Simmons, maybe Cam Thomas. There's some things to be excited about, but Simmons hasn't lived up to his draft billing. Collins is a little too early to tell. Cam Thomas, obviously, too early to tell. But even if Collins and Thomas hit the high side of their variance, I don't think they're becoming superstars of their position. So I do think it's going to end up being one of the weaker defenses in the NFL, despite Jonathan Gannon being a defensive-minded head coach. So yeah, obviously a rough year there for Arizona, and then that correlates to the 2-15 record. Let's go ahead and show it, but yeah, obviously not a lot of it is pretty. Washington, in the nation's capital, I'll give it to the Commanders because they're at home. Also, no Kyler Murray, so Sam Howell, Colt McCoy, kind of a revenge game there for Colt McCoy. Maybe I'll change my mind and change that. I think the Giants can run all over them. I think the Cowboys can pass all over them. San Francisco's a better team. Bengals are a better team. Give them a division win against Los Angeles. Seattle will be able to tear them up through the air. Also, I think that defense is more than good enough to hold their own against whatever Arizona's bringing to the table. Baltimore's better. Cleveland, it's the defensive line. It's the passing attack. It's the run game. Yeah, that's a problem. It's the Atlanta run game. Houston, this would be a tricky game. Like, if you're an Arizona fan, do you want to lose so your pick's better, or do you want to see Houston lose so that pick's better? I don't know. That could go either way. Depending on where you're at in the season, you might want to see your team win just because you already know you're going to pick a top three, so maybe you can knock down Houston a little bit. But either way, they're going to win that game no matter what because one of their two picks is getting better. And then the Rams, the Steelers, again, I just think they're a slightly better team. I think that defense is going to be really, really good again. The other win comes against Chicago. Sorry, Bears fans. I have to find games where they could win. In that late in the year, maybe it's just like a weird, rough Justin Fields game. Again, I'm kind of stretching to find games where the Rams could win. I don't think the Rams can be very good, so that was kind of an easier division game. You could flip in the way of the Cardinals, but after that, it was like, I don't know. They're not beating Philadelphia. I don't see them stealing a game from Seattle, maybe, but probably not. So the Bears just kind of became the team I decided to give them a loss to late in the year. So sorry, Bears fans. I know you're going to be happy about that, but man, another video where I end on a very somber note. I might have to do this in reverse order, go worst record to best record, but oh well. That's going to do it for the NFC West way too early record predictions. Let me hear your thoughts down below in the comments section. I have the 49ers win the division and Seattle making the playoffs as the 7th seed, but how many teams do you think from this division get into the postseason? I'd love to hear your thoughts and your record predictions down below in the comments section. And tell me where you think I'm wrong. Do it respectfully, and I'll make sure I respond to your comment. But do understand today, actually when this video is released, I'm moving, so it may take a day or two before I get back to you. But love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and want to see more football content like this. But that's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I'm signing off.